Lovecraft writing a Shoggoth, one of the creatures that they talk about that the old ones created. And eventually the Shoggoths turned on their masters, and eventually only a few old ones survived, and they went down to the bottom of the earth and basically slept. And in their dreams they could communicate with people. It's really creepy, weird stuff. And it really gets dark. But anyway, the Cthulhuites and the Old Ones warred in this mythos that H.P. Lovecraft created. They both had been sleeping under the ocean until the stars are right again. Cthulhu is under the sea sleeping and dreaming of terrible things that he will do to the society when he finally comes back when the stars are right. And they always say the stars are right. So there's a little bit of weird stuff with timing or whatever for them for when they come back. It's just kind of creepy stuff because it's like it gets into the hollow earth and it really gets into what's at the bottom of the sea because it says there's giant cities down there and these creatures live down there. I'm going to read the summary from, I think it's Wikipedia, of the story of Call of Cthulhu. So this is what they wrote, and this is what the book writes about the Call of Cthulhu story, the summary. The Call of Cthulhu is presented as a manuscript found among the papers of the late Francis Wayland Thurston of New York. In the text, Thurston recounts his discovery of notes left behind by his grand-uncle, George Gamel Angel, a prominent professor of Semitic language at Brown University in Providence, Rhode Island, who died suddenly in the winter of 1926 through 27 after being jostled by a nautical-looking Negro. Now that's the quote. Of course, that's H.P. Lovecraft being racist again. So just wanted to read that. Now in the story, it talks about the religion of worshiping Cthulhu being passed down through the eons and will forever be, I guess, according to the story. Basically, it sounds to me like fallen angel worship in a lot of ways. Now, H.P. Lovecraft was an atheist as far as I know, so it's kind of interesting that he's trying to make something scary for an atheist that doesn't believe in any god. But it's ironic how some of these stories sound like, Satan waiting for his time to come back and rule the earth, basically. And it's loosely kind of following almost a Christian revelation in the Bible kind of theme. A lot of this stuff is kind of a cult, the way that they talk about some of the stuff. And of course, he's being an atheist, so he doesn't really see religion, and he doesn't have any real respect for it in the story. In some of the religions he's talking about, I'm kind of glad he doesn't have any respect for it. But he still puts it in the story because it kind of fits. One thing that's kind of stands out is there is a book used in H.P. Lovecraft stories, and it's also on other things. Since H.P. Lovecraft has been around for so long, or whatever, his stories, people have used it now in other stories. But the Necronomicon, it's a fictional book as far as I know, that basically was written by a mad Arab, according to H.P. Lovecraft in the story. And people in the H.P. Lovecraft mythos uses this Necronomicon. It's basically like an occult book with kind of magic and crazy things passed down throughout the eons or whatever. And it was written by a mad Arab, obviously, and he went crazy after writing it. I think he committed suicide or something. I don't remember what happened exactly. But it's really interesting that this book kind of ties all these mythos stories together, because these occult groups in these stories are always into the Necronomicon. And even, I think the character Atwell in At the Mountains of Madness, I'll be getting to eventually here, He even talks about how he read the Necronomicon. It's talking about the old ones and the Cthulhuites and those creatures, how they warred, and it basically tells it's basically the Bible for Cthulhu belief or religion in these stories. It's a fictional book to kind of tie it all together. And a lot of these stories also talk about Cyclopean cities. That's specifically is what they talk about, under the sea. And that's giant, like, blocks, and I've heard that Cyclopean means like Cyclops, like giants made them. I don't know. I've just heard that. That's heavy in these stories. You always hear about giant stones and giant stone blocks in these stories, obelisks, all these giant old-fashioned things, I guess. Cyclopean cities or Cyclopean blocks or whatever. He talks about this stuff in a lot of places in these stories, and it's always under the sea, and it's just this. I think H.P. Lovecraft honestly was scared to death of the ocean, which I don't blame him, because I really don't like the ocean either, because I don't know what's under there, and there's a lot of things we don't know about down there. So that's kind of a good spot to tie a horror story to, because it's so scary what you could find underneath the ocean. It also ties back to the dragon that comes out of the sea. The dragon, which is like Satan or whatever. So that's also kind of ties into it too, and that's kind of creepy to think about, if it's like a Cthulhu-like creature according to the Lovecraft mythos. There's a lot of pagan cults used in this story, and a lot of black magic kind of things that they're doing, or voodoo, which is, and they're talking, and I think some voodoo cults in real life talk about water cities under the ocean and some kind of beings under the ocean or whatever, creatures. Basically all these people in these pagan groups in strange dark places in these stories always end up worshipping the old ones or the Cthulhuites. They're basically alien worshippers. By the end of the Call of Cthulhu story, there is actually a culmination of everything, and it kind of all gets summed up when these sailors end up coming across this little island thing or whatever with this giant door, and everything's kind of hard for them to understand because it's all alien technology and all this stuff, and somehow they end up opening this door, and of course Cthulhu comes out, this giant lumbering thing the size of like Godzilla, comes out of this nasty, slimy, rainy, crappy looking little island or whatever, and he comes out and he's like half like spirit, like half like a spirit and half physical, which is kind of ironic because it's like a fallen angel, and it's really weird. It can actually go through some things, and then it just starts chasing after them, and they finally get their boat going and everything. And you gotta remember, this is the 20s when this story's being told. So anyway, they got this old boat, and they're just going to town. They're trying to get away from this thing, and this thing comes after them. It kills a bunch of guys when the door gets opened. So a bunch of them die right away initially when they by accidentally open this giant door. And then they're talking about, oh my god, it's Cthulhu. Cthulhu is going to be, whatever. And then they finally basically get away from it. It's swimming after them, and somehow they get away from it or whatever. And it's really, that was like the finale of the story. And then it talks about the guy, he's thinking back on this story. And then he's talking about how, he thinks that thing is still out there. And he can only imagine what it's going to do. And I think that's when he says that quote or whatever at the beginning of this, when I talked about how someday the piecing together of disassociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein that we shall either go mad from revelation or flee from the light into the peace and safety of a new dark age, which that's the quote, and that's really quite creepy, because why would you find peace and safety in a new dark age? Sounds like people killing each other and just completely anarchy, just hell on earth. So that's why I equated that to Revelation, because that really is hell on earth if you think about it, So that pretty much sums up the Call of Cthulhu. I mean, I could go into some other things, but I'm going to do another episode of 2 more stories like this, and I'm going to get a little bit deeper into the Hollow Earth and stuff like that, and even into UFOs and aliens and undersea stuff. So that'll pretty much wrap up these 2 stories for this episode. So I hope you enjoyed that. Next week, like I said, I'll get into the Hollow Earth a little bit more, because I'm going to be talking about At the Mountains of Madness, which is a story that really deals with that. And I'll even be talking about Admiral Byrd, a man who flew into the Hollow Earth a little bit. And I'll be getting into also a story called The Shadow over Innsmouth, which is kind of creepy. It's about a small town or whatever where people have ancestors that are basically came from Dagon. And these people are not really hybrid, but they're just people that are like de-evolved, like just not very good people. But it's like a group of people that are like kind of almost Freemasonish. They have like a secret society kind. It's just a creepy town, and it basically gets into ancestor worship of where they came from and all this, and also talking about a video game I played that was of that story. But that's all coming up next week, so I hope you enjoyed this show. I really tried to break down H.P. Lovecraft and everything about him, in a sense, and some of his stories. And I just want to say to some Christians out there that might think, oh, he's a bad person because he's talking about H.P. Lovecraft. Well, a lot of people analyze The Lord of the Rings, and I always use that for example, because a lot of people say, oh, Gandalf is like Jesus, and he's the equivalent of Jesus in those stories. Well, Gandalf is a wizard, and the Bible says have nothing to do with wizards, so that's not good either. And a lot of that stuff, and I really even think that, like The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, some of that stuff in there, I don't think it's very Christian-y either. And I'm sure some of you will disagree with me, but I really don't think that men walking around with goat horns can be anything good. I mean, that's Azazel. That's basically what that is. I don't know. Well, anyway, I'm pretty much going to call this a show, and then next week we'll get into 2 more stories, and we'll basically do the same thing as this. Alright, well, that's all. If you enjoy this show, please feel free to share it. You can find us on Spreaker, iTunes, and most podcatchers. And if you'd like to support the show, please leave a review on iTunes or Spreaker or wherever you find this show. And for more information on this show, go to the Fringianity Underground podcast Facebook group and like us. Images will be posted there for this show and others as well. Please check Spreaker or wherever you get this podcast every Sunday evening for new episodes. And thank you for listening.